What if I told you that even despite Germany selling $2.8 billion worth of Bitcoin, we're still looking very bullish? Well, we're currently sitting at about $67,000 and increasing. We're about to test the 70,000 mark for a sixth time. So let's take a look at some of the data and decide how bullish we should feel. Okay, so we got Bitcoin on the 1-day chart here. As you can see, we have returned back to the top of this range. We have been ranging for about 153 days, bouncing between about 72,000 and 53. And then if we really zoom out, we can see that things really aren't as bad as they seem. Virtually everybody who owns any Bitcoin right now should be in profit or very close to profit. Obviously have quite a little uptrend going right here as well. So for sure looking bullish with this trend unless it is invalidated. But so recently the market and crypto Twitter has felt like it has been in shambles. We did just see a 23% drop, which this drop started about June 6th, and really, it's actually pretty normal to happen, but as more and more retail investors come in, seeing our portfolio down by 23% isn't always user-friendly for the noobs. I definitely feel like a lot of people got shaken out at this level, and I'm about to go over some data as why I think this truly is a bottom or a local bottom, and we are definitely about to thrust upward above 70,000. What potentially could be the cause of this massive 23% dip? Recently, Germany has been offloading tons of Bitcoin. Now, the story goes that Bitcoin confiscated a bunch of Bitcoin off of the computers. This was a movie piracy site called Movie 2K, and apparently they got about $2.87 billion worth of Bitcoin and have chose to sell it. That's approximately 50,000 Bitcoin. And Germany's sell has been really controversial. I've seen a lot of people come out on Twitter saying, when has Germany ever made a good decision in history? How are you selling Bitcoin right now? One thing that's been said as well is that if the Germany government had waited just a few days, they actually could have made an additional $3 billion. So that's just kind of a slap in the face for selling Bitcoin. Germany is officially considered a JEET. In addition to this huge sell-off that has added massive selling pressure, there's also the Mt. Gox situation. Basically, Mt. Gox is beginning their creditor payback process. Now, who is Mt. Gox? What is this? What's going on? This was a massive exchange that collapsed back in 2014. Basically, 127,000 creditors were affected by this exchange's downfall. The entire loss tallied up to about 850,000 Bitcoin, which is currently valued at about $51 billion. And at the peak of Mt. Gox, they actually transacted 70% of all Bitcoin transactions. I mean, these were the big guys on the street back in 2014. I mean, 70% of all transactions, that is absolutely insane. But at the end of all of this, Mt. Gox owes about $9.4 billion to its affected creditors. And in May, 141,000 Bitcoin were actually transferred to a company wallet, which appears to be the prep for the paybacks. So yeah, basically $9.4 billion worth of Bitcoin is about to get repaid back to creditors who had thought they had lost all of their money from an exchange collapse. So how could this go? Well, it could be a massive sell-off. Everybody could receive their Bitcoin and instantly sell it into the market. This would definitely drop the price, or potentially it couldn't be that bad. So here's a few things to note. About 75% of creditors actually accepted a early payout in exchange for only receiving 90% of their total allocation. This actually reduced the amount of Bitcoin from 141,000 down to about 90,000. So definitely lowered the impact. Another thing to note is that about 30,000 Bitcoin actually belong to Bitconica and the Mt. Gox investment fund. And both of these parties definitely do not plan to sell their Bitcoin. And this would also just massively help to reduce the sell pressure that will be added onto the market. Another reason that we might not see a sell-off is for tax reasons. A lot of people might not want to sell their Bitcoin due to a tax loss on taking the income. As you may know, the current administration does not like capital gains, so they would definitely take a large portion of that right now. So, and kind of one of the final things I want to talk about with the repayments is that it will be on a staggered distribution model, basically an unvesting schedule, which this will just really help to lighten the load on anybody who is wanting to sell all of their tokens, as they will just be getting a set distribution of it over the course of a time period. And that just always helps with introducing a seller to the market and not nuking the chart. So yeah, that's kind of my bearish news, but now let's get to some more bullish news. As you may know, Bitcoin 2024 is currently going on in Nashville, and Donald Trump actually spoke at the event, and it was pretty cool. He got a lot of support. He said a lot of really bullish things.
Day one, I will fire Gary Gensler and appoint a new SEC chairman. boy, was that unpopular.
Basically saying that the war with crypto and the SEC will be absolutely stopped. I mean, what more bullish news would you possibly want for crypto? Donald Trump also said he would like to double down on the mining side of Bitcoin by ramping up energy production and offering lower energy prices to mining companies to keep the network secure, and more miners, more energy, more Bitcoin. It's pretty simple. And then on top of all this, Donald Trump also vowed that if he is elected president, he will create a U.S. strategic Bitcoin holding reserve. All of this is just massive news to hear from the potentially next president, as crypto's kind of always been at war with government, particularly the U.S. government. So yeah, bullish, bullish, bullish. But let's actually look at some on-chain data to really get a grasp of where we currently are. Now, the first thing I want to look at is all of the previous halvings, as I want to give an idea of where we currently are post-halving in comparison to other halvings. So we are currently 100 or 101 days post-halving, literally perfect for this video, which I've marked with this blue line. And as you can see, we are just barely tapping the previous all-time high that we had, which was 65,000. And we've just returned here for what appears to be our 6th attempt at the 70K range. But yeah, as you can see, we're 100 days post-halving, which I actually marked on the 2020 halving, 2016, and the 2012 halving. You know, as you can see, generally a large part of the boring portion of the bull run has occurred. It seems like in 2012 we might have started ripping a little bit sooner, but that was back when Bitcoin was literally $12. Just imagine if you had bought $100 worth of that. Anywho, we all fumbled that bag. I was like 11, but all right. Back in 2016, we were sitting at about $640, and 100 days post-halving was really when things started to kick off, about 90-ish days. Really started getting fun, and then boom. Yeah, crazy. We take a look at 2020, 100 days post-halving. We saw a little increase at about 80 days, and then we proceeded to just climb. And then again, here we are currently. Now, one thing to note about this most recent halving that is pretty unique is that we had already hit our all-time highs before the halving, and that's never happened before. But as you can see, we traced back down. We have seen a 23% dip, but that is actually fairly normal of a thing to see. I mean, there's dips all the time. I mean, just this little dip, even right here, is about 16%. I mean, back in 2016 on the climb up, saw a 33% dip. So everyone's freaking out about this. It feels bad when you see the whole market and everything's red. It definitely isn't fun to look at, but it is definitely not the end of the world. I believe we are very close to seeing some massive growth. As you can see, it is all prepped and programmed. It previously happened. They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely does rhyme. So here's the Bitcoin ETF flows. As you can see, we are seeing a lot of consistent inflow, a few massive outflow days, but they really don't compare to the big inflow days. In total, we are sitting at about 17 billion dollars of inflow. This is the funding rate heat map. I've showed this a few times. I've learned that this doesn't really guarantee an upward movement, but when you see a lot of green on this chart, it just means that the market is healthy and the environment itself is actually healthy for an upward Bitcoin movement. Now, this is the hash ribbon indicator. Essentially, this just compares the hash rate moving averages with the price of Bitcoin. You can make a few takeaways from things that happen, like the crossing of the 30-day SMA and the 60-day SMA of hash rate. As you can see, more times than not, when the 60-day moving average crosses above the 30-day moving average, we do see a upward trend. And here's the Bitcoin RSI. As you can see, we are sitting right at about 68, and we're moving from the bottom upwards, which this definitely supports a bullish thesis. And then here's just a chart showcasing all of the previous halvings and again where we currently are. And as you can see, we currently have seen nothing yet. There is so much growth left. There's so much upward momentum that is coming. Previously, these next few months are definitely very bullish for the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And then what we see here is the miner capitulation chart. Essentially, this just showcases the miner profitability and when sell-offs happen and whatnot. And really, when you're transitioning from the blue into the green, that is typically an indicator for a rapid price increase in Bitcoin. So we'll definitely have to see how this plays out, but it's looking like it is getting done with this accumulation phase, and we are looking to start our upward movement. So yeah, I just want to leave you guys with this chart on the screen. I believe we are within 3 to 6 months of really seeing some insane rapid growth. So it's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you at my next video. And as always, please remember to stay degen.